Bandits harassed the waitress at the bar, but the most dangerous count in the kingdom was there. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The tavern in Burgos breathed with the rhythm of a long day ending. People talked over one another, eager to claim the last scraps of warmth before night swallowed the streets. Inés Valcázar moved between tables with practiced grace, her apron brushing past boots, cloaks, and benches. She offered quick smiles, collected empty cups, and kept her thoughts tucked close, the way one protected a fragile keepsake. The work wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and she counted every coin she earned as one step toward her father's medicine. She brought a jug of watered wine to a group of traveling merchants. They thanked her with boisterous cheer, nothing more. Those were the customers she liked, loud but harmless, noisy but predictable. Tonight, however, the atmosphere shifted. She sensed it before she identified its cause. A group of unfamiliar men settled near the door, spreading like a growing shadow over the wooden room. They weren't dangerous, not truly, but their voices carried an edge of mischief and self-importance, as though expecting the tavern to revolve around them. When she approached with a tray, one of them leaned back and grinned. He was older than the others, with laughter lines that hinted he'd once been likable, but too many cups had thickened his tongue. "Here she comes," he said to his companions. "Burgos keeps better company than I expected." Inés set the cups down without meeting his gaze. "If you need anything else, call Joaquin at the counter," she said. She tried to step away, but another voice rose behind her. "Stay a moment," one of them said. "Tell us something of this town. A traveler needs guidance." She paused, keeping her voice steady. "I am working, sir, but the owner knows much more of the town than I do." She turned again, hoping that politeness would settle the matter, but another insisted, "Just for a breath of time. One question won't keep you." The room quieted in a subtle ripple. Not fear, only discomfort. People recognized a tension growing the way fishermen sensed a storm before clouds appeared. Inés hated being the center of such a tension. She had lived her whole life trying to pass unnoticed. She made a second attempt to leave, but one of them shifted his chair in her path, not touching her, simply making his presence known. "Where does a lady like you find rest after work?" he asked, with a smile meant to be charming but spoiled by its persistence. Before she answered, another regular at a nearby table coughed loudly, trying to divert the men. "Let her be," he murmured. "She's busy." But the travelers were in high spirits and ignored the subtle plea. Inés breathed slowly, insisting on calm. She had managed far worse situations with soft words and patience. "Gentlemen, please," she said. "I have other tables waiting." One of them leaned closer. "Just a moment, humor us." She looked around the room for escape. The tavern owner, Joaquin, was serving at the far end, unaware of the exchange. Most patrons kept to themselves, waiting to see if the encounter would resolve on its own. No one wished to intervene prematurely. Burgos was a town where one learned caution early. That was when Inés noticed the hooded figure in the back corner. He had arrived some time earlier, silent as a closing door, and had not moved since. His heavy cloak hid all but his hands, which rested still on the table, a stillness that set him apart from the rest of the tavern. He had not joined the laughter, nor had he glanced up when the merchants' voices rose, but Inés had sensed him from the beginning. Something about his posture, the tilt of his head, stirred a memory too faint to grasp. As she passed his table earlier, she had felt eyes lift to her. Not lingering, not invasive, only watchful. She had felt that gaze more than she had seen it. Now she glanced again, drawn without meaning to. The hood hid his features completely, yet the outline of his frame struck her like a name spoken in a dream. Still, she forced her attention back to her duty. "Please, let me pass," she told the men quietly. They shifted again, not harshly, not rudely, but with an exaggerated flourish of camaraderie among themselves. One of them lifted his cup and gestured. "We only wish to know your name." "Inés," she answered, hoping that honesty might satisfy them and allow her to continue. "Now, Inés," the man repeated, tasting the word with a grin. "A pretty name for a pretty worker of fate." She exhaled, willing herself not to stiffen. "If you need anything more, call for Joaquin." She moved sideways to slip past, and one of them instinctively touched her sleeve. Not a grip, only a casual gesture, but enough to make her stop. She stepped back with a firm shake of her head. "Please," she said, "do not do that." Her refusal finally sparked murmurs across the room. A few locals shifted in their seats. A woman near the hearth looked toward the counter, perhaps ready to call Joaquin if needed. But the group of travelers seemed oblivious to the growing discomfort. One of them tried to lighten the moment. "We mean no harm," he insisted. "Let us buy you a drink at least, a cup of wine for your troubles." "I do not drink while working," she replied. "I ask your understanding." The mood hung in limbo, balanced on the edge of something uncertain. The tavern's fire crackled, but even it seemed quieter now. Inez clutched her tray close to her chest, preparing to walk away regardless of what they said next. She would not allow the night to complicate her already heavy responsibilities. She turned, but one of the men spoke again, this time louder, perhaps hoping to push past the awkwardness he himself had created. "Come now, Inez. Do not be so distant. Sit with us for a breath." Before she could refuse, another voice, calm, resonant, and unmistakably commanding, cut through the room. She said no. The words carried no hostility, only certainty. The silence that followed was instant and complete, falling like snow upon the tavern. Every head turned toward the shadowed corner. The hooded figure rose. He stood with a quiet authority that needed no explanation. His cloak shifted in a ripple, revealing boots dusted from travel and the firm outline of a man accustomed to responsibility. He stepped forward, unhurried, as if each movement was measured by purpose rather than heat. Inez felt her heartbeat lift to her throat. The travelers watched him approach with puzzled expressions, their earlier confidence draining into a cautious curiosity. The stranger stopped near their table, not close enough to intimidate, but close enough to be impossible to ignore. "Allow the young lady to continue her work," he said. "She has given her answer." One of the men, the eldest, tried to recover his bravado. "Who are you to involve yourself, friend?" he asked, aiming for an easy tone. "We're just passing an evening with talk. No offense meant." "No offense taken," the stranger replied. His voice remained even. "And none should be pressed upon her." The man hesitated, caught between pride and common sense. The room waited. Even the fire seemed suspended in expectation. Finally, the traveler lifted his hands in surrender. "Very well," he said. "We meant no trouble." His companions nodded sheepishly, and they scooted their chairs back slightly, giving Inez ample space to pass. Relief washed through the room, subtle but unmistakable. Inez let out a breath only she noticed. She bowed her head politely to the men, then stepped away. She intended to return to her tasks at once, but the stranger's gaze followed her, not sharpened, not heavy, merely attentive, as if he carried concern without declaring it. She approached him slowly. She felt she ought to thank him, but words tangled too easily in moments of tension. When she reached him, he lowered his hood. Gasps fluttered across the tavern like startled birds. A scar traced his left cheek, faint but unmistakable. His hair was dark, slightly disheveled from travel. His eyes, grey with a peculiar depth, met hers with a recognition that sent a sudden tremor through her. She knew that face, not from rumors or storied tales whispered through Burgos, though there were plenty of those. She knew him from memory, the Count Mateo de Eslava. His presence alone quieted the entire establishment. No one feared him in a violent sense. They feared disappointing him, feared his reputation for stern, unyielding justice in matters of fairness. He was a man who stepped into disputes only when necessary, but when he did, he never left matters unresolved. He looked at her as though searching for a name long lost. She felt her lips part in surprise, unable to command her expression. He studied her features, the shape of her face, the set of her eyes, the curve of her jaw, tracing all with intense thought. "Inez Valcázar," he said quietly. Her heart faltered. How could he possibly know her name? Her tray nearly slipped from her hands, and she grasped it tighter, unsure whether to speak or flee. She steadied her breath and whispered, "You remember me?" Mateo's eyes softened. "I do." She stepped back without meaning to. The room watched, but no one dared interrupt. Inez felt exposed, as though every secret of her life now rested in the open air. "I met you long ago," he said gently. "When you were still a child," her voice emerged as a breath. I thought you would never recognize me again." Mateo's gaze deepened. "I could not forget. Not you. Not your family." She shook her head slightly, overwhelmed. "But why are you here?" she asked. Matteo's answer came low and reflective. "Not by chance, Inez." Her pulse raced. She tried to gather her thoughts, but they scattered like leaves in wind. Before she could form another question, someone spoke behind them. "Conde Matteo, why would you know the name of a tavern girl?" Every face turned toward the voice, waiting for the answer. The tavern held its breath, suspended in a moment that could change Inez's life forever. The question lingered in the air, sharp as a bell toll cutting through midnight. No insult, no threat, only pure astonishment from one of the merchants near the hearth. The stranger's voice carried the disbelief of a man who had never seen a noble and a tavern worker share a memory. Matteo didn't turn toward the man. His eyes remained on Inez, steady, unhurried, as though nothing else in the tavern demanded his attention. The silence thickened until even the travelers near the door sat straighter, their earlier bravado fading into quiet curiosity. Inez cleared her throat, searching for balance between fear and dignity. "I don't think he meant offense, my lord," she said. "People are simply surprised." Matteo nodded once, slowly. Then he lifted his gaze toward the man who had spoken, offering him a calm reply. "I know her name because I have cause to remember those who showed kindness in a moment when I had little certainty in life." The man blinked, unsure how to respond. Several patrons shifted uncomfortably, sensing the weight of the truth behind Matteo's words, even if they did not understand the story beneath them. Matteo then turned back to Inez and asked gently, "Do you have a moment to speak with me?" Her breath caught. She didn't know how to refuse him without seeming disrespectful, yet she also didn't know how to accept without inviting gossip. Joaquin, the tavern owner, noticed her hesitation and stepped closer. He spoke softly to her. "If the Count wishes to speak, child, take a moment. I'll watch the room." She looked between Joaquin and Matteo. "Only a moment," she murmured, her voice small but steady. Matteo gestured toward the quietest table at the back, far from the travelers and the crowded hearth. Inez followed him, acutely aware of every gaze tracking her, though no one dared whisper. She placed her tray aside and sat opposite him, folding her hands in her lap to keep them from trembling. He took the seat with a kind of deliberate humility, as if trying to make the moment less intimidating for her. "You look so much like your mother," he said softly. The words struck her harder than she expected. She had spent years avoiding any reflection of her mother, afraid that remembering would deepen the ache of her loss. She lowered her gaze, murmuring, "She died long ago." Matteo nodded. "Yes, I learned of it only recently." "Recently?" she echoed, surprised. "How?" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I found myself looking back on parts of my youth that I had left unresolved. Your family was among them. I made inquiries. I wanted to know what had become of you." The thought unsettled and warmed her at the same time. "Why?" she whispered. He met her eyes with a look that carried years. "Because your mother once helped me see the world differently. I never thanked her properly, and I never forgot the child who stood at her side." She stared at him, trying to place him in her memories. She recalled a man riding through her village, stopping to speak with her father, asking for directions to a monastery. She remembered how her mother had invited him inside to rest, how the stranger had listened to her laughter and spoken kindly to her father. "You were that traveler," she said suddenly. "The one who sat by the orchard with my mother." "Yes," Matteo answered. "I was 17, lost in thought, fleeing expectations. Your family gave me an hour of peace." She tried to absorb the revelation, but her thoughts tangled. "I never expected you to remember us." "Some moments don't fade," he replied. Inez felt a strange ache in her chest. It wasn't fear, it wasn't distress. It was something quieter, something stirring. But Matteo's expression shifted slightly, becoming more serious. "And yet I come here tonight for more than memory," he said. "There is something I must ask of you." She straightened instinctively. "Of me? But what could I offer a man like you?" "Truth," he said, "and perhaps some understanding." Her confusion grew. "My lord, I fear I don't—" He lifted a hand gently. "I will explain, but not here, not while you're working. I only ask that you grant me a moment after your shift." She hesitated. "It's late, Count Matteo. I must return home after I finish. My father waits for me." "Then allow me to escort you," he said. not for protection, only so that we may speak without interruption." Her breath caught again. She felt the weight of every eye in the tavern pressing on her. "People will talk," she whispered. "Let them," he answered calmly. "I have never concerned myself with idle talk." She lowered her gaze again, feeling both shy and strangely bold. "I will think on it." Matteo nodded, accepting her uncertainty with grace. "That is all I ask." Before either of them could say more, the travelers at the door began murmuring to themselves again. One of them, emboldened by drink or curiosity, stood up, not with aggression, but with exaggerated politeness. He approached Matteo slowly and spoke with forced courtesy. "I mean no disrespect, my lord," he began, "but why would a nobleman spend his evening among common folk, and why take such interest in a tavern girl?" The room tensed once more, though no threat hung in the air. Only an uncomfortable question, one everyone had been thinking but did not dare voice. Matteo turned to the man with an expression free of pride or annoyance. "Because justice belongs to all, not just to nobles," he said, "and because respect is due to every person who works honestly." The man blinked, uncertain how to answer. Matteo then added, "I speak with her because I know her family. That is reason enough." Inez swallowed hard, wishing the floor would open beneath her. She hated being the center of such attention, though his words eased some of her discomfort. The man finally nodded awkwardly and returned to his seat. Inez leaned forward and whispered, "I hope you do not think badly of the travelers. They are only curious." "I think nothing ill of them," he said. "Curiosity is a harmless thing when left at that." She managed a small, tense smile. "I should return to work." "Of course," he said, rising slightly as she stood. "But we are not finished speaking." His voice held no command, only a quiet certainty. She returned to her duties, but her mind no longer belonged to the tavern. Her hands moved automatically, delivering cups, collecting plates, but every thought circled Matteo's presence, his words, his memory of her family. The regular patrons whispered among themselves, careful not to be overheard. Joaquin watched her with a subtle mix of worry and encouragement. Even the travelers, now subdued, kept glancing toward the back corner where the Count sat again, hood lowered, deep in private thought. Near closing time, Inez stepped behind the counter to return her tray. Joaquin leaned in. "If he wishes to accompany you home, I won't stop you," he murmured. "But be certain it's what you want." "I don't know what I want," she whispered. "I don't understand any of this." "No one does when life changes," he said. But he spoke with respect. "That is worth something." She nodded faintly, trying to steady her thoughts. She finished wiping the last table, then gathered her shawl from the back room. When she returned to the main hall, Matteo stood waiting near the door. "Have you decided?" he asked softly. I suppose we may walk a short distance," she said, "but only until the main road. I do not wish to trouble you further." "It is no trouble," he replied. They stepped outside into the cool night, leaving behind the hum of voices and the glow of the tavern lamps. The street was quiet. A dog barked in the distance. A faint breeze brushed against her hair. They walked side by side, maintaining a respectful distance. Matteo did not rush her. He let silence sit comfortably between them until she finally asked, "What did you wish to speak to me about?" He looked ahead, choosing his words carefully. "Your family once held more than this town remembers. I believe it concerns you still. But I wanted to know who you had become before saying more." She frowned, confused. "I don't understand. My family is simple. We have nothing. That is what I need to speak with you about," he said. They walked a few more steps until she stopped under a small lantern hanging above the street. Its warm light fell across his face, illuminating the scar, the sharp lines of his jaw, the tired strength in his eyes. She forced herself to ask, "Why does my family matter to you, my lord?" Matteo met her gaze with a look that held both seriousness and something softer, something she didn't yet dare name. "Because," he said, "your family helped me once, in a way that changed the course of my life, and tonight I discover that you may be linked to matters far greater than you know." She stared at him, the street quiet around them, the night holding its breath. Then she whispered, "What matters?" Matteo looked at her, the lantern light flickering across his face. "That is what I came here to uncover, Inez Valcázar." Inez felt the air tighten around them, as though the night itself waited to hear Mateo's explanation. She wrapped her shawl around her shoulders, suddenly aware of the chill, but more aware of the strange path her conversation had taken. She had expected a simple thanks, perhaps a passing memory, but nothing as heavy as mysteries tied to her family name. She forced her voice to steady itself. "Tell me what you mean." Mateo studied her a moment before answering. "Not here," he said quietly. "The street is open. Anyone might overhear, and the matter touches more people than you know." His caution made her uneasy, but his tone held no hint of danger, only sincerity. "Then why speak at all?" she asked. "Why bring this to me?" "Because you have a right to the truth," he replied, "and because tonight confirmed something I suspected." He hesitated before adding, "You are not as forgotten by this kingdom as you believe." The idea made her dizzy. She lived in a small room above a leather shop. She worked from afternoon to midnight. Her father's illness pressed on her shoulders every day. How could they not be forgotten? "My family lost everything years ago," she whispered. "There is nothing left." He started walking again, but slowly, giving her time to follow. "I'm not speaking of possessions," he said. "I'm speaking of history, of people, of promises made and never fulfilled." She walked beside him, confusion swirling in her thoughts. "If this is connected to you, my lord, say so plainly. Why does the Count of Eslava concern himself with an old tavern worker and her father?" He gave her a faint, sad smile. "Because before I was a count, I was a boy who found refuge in a humble home. And that home belonged to you." He paused. "I remember your mother giving water to my horse when I could scarcely stand from exhaustion. I remember your father mapping roads for me on scraps of parchment. And I remember you, standing behind your mother's skirts, watching me with the most curious eyes." That last part brought unexpected warmth to her cheeks. "I was small," she murmured. "I doubt I made any difference." "You did," he replied firmly. "Your family gave me trust when I had earned none. At the time I was running from responsibilities. Your mother told me something I never forgot." Inez waited, but he did not continue. "What did she say?" she asked. Mateo looked ahead, voice turning thoughtful. "She said that good deeds done quietly are often the ones that shape a person's path. That kindness without reward is the mark of true strength." Inez lifted her gaze toward the dark sky. "My mother. She always spoke like that. She could turn simple moments into lessons." "Yes," Mateo murmured. She did not know how long they walked after that. Their steps echoed softly on the stone street. Houses slept, lamps dimmed. The world seemed smaller, quieter, holding only their voices. Finally she asked, "What does any of this have to do with my life now?" Mateo stopped walking. The lantern above them flickered, illuminating the hard line of his jaw and the softness in his eyes. "Because someone in the capital has taken interest again in the Valcazar estate." Her breath hitched. "That land has been lost for years. No one wants it." "Someone does," Mateo said, "and not for its value, for its history." She shook her head. "But why now? Why after so long?" "Because records from those years have resurfaced, and someone realized the estate's confusion of ownership traces back to promises between two families. Yours and mine." She stared at him, stunned. "Promises." "I know nothing about that." "You were too young," he said gently. "And perhaps no one told you after the hard times came. But I believe whatever was once agreed was never carried out, and now someone has revived it. Someone with reason to question who the estate belongs to." Her heartbeat raced. "Are you saying the land could be ours again?" "Possibly," Mateo answered. "But land is not my foremost concern tonight." "Then what is?" she whispered. "You?" he said simply. "I needed to know who you had become before speaking of matters that may touch your future." His words unsettled her deeply. She felt sudden heat rise to her cheeks. "Why would my future matter to you?" she asked softly. He opened his mouth to answer, but a sudden voice called her name from behind. "Inez!" She turned sharply. A young man stood under the lantern with a basket in his hands. She recognized him, Ramiro, the baker's apprentice. He blinked between her and Mateo, confusion spreading across his face. I saw you leaving work," he said. "I thought you might need company for the walk home." Inez felt a wave of embarrassment crash over her. Ramiro was kind, well-meaning, and everyone in the neighborhood expected him to court her someday. She had heard whispered hints from his mother, and now here he was, staring at the most powerful man in the kingdom standing at her side. Ramiro cleared his throat. "My apologies, sir. I did not mean to intrude." "You did not intrude," Mateo said pleasantly. "We were simply speaking." Ramiro hesitated, adjusting the basket awkwardly. "Inez, your father sent word earlier. He asked me to check on you. He thought you might be late tonight." Her stomach dropped. "My father? Did something happen?" "No, he's well," Ramiro said quickly. "Only anxious. The night grows long." Inez felt a rush of guilt. She had forgotten the hour. "Thank you, Ramiro. Tell him I'm on my way." Ramiro nodded, but lingered, glancing again at Mateo. He looked uncertain whether he should leave her alone with such a man. The concern on his face was genuine. Mateo noticed and offered a small bow of respect toward the young baker. "You may accompany us if you wish," he said simply. Ramiro's eyes widened. "Oh, no, my lord, I wouldn't dare." "It is no trouble," Mateo replied. Seeing Ramiro struggle, Inez stepped in. "It's a short walk from here," she said. "I will be fine, but thank you for checking on me." Ramiro hesitated a moment longer, then nodded reluctantly. "Very well. Good night, Inez." "And good night to you, sir." "Good night," Mateo said. Ramiro hurried away, disappearing down the narrow street. Inez exhaled slowly once he was gone. "I'm sorry for that interruption. He meant well." "There is nothing to apologize for," Mateo said. "People look after one another here. It speaks well of your community." She looked at him, suddenly curious about how such a man saw her small, humble world. "You seem to know much of our town despite being far from it. I know enough to understand why someone like you is shaped as she is," he said. "You grew with honest people." She dipped her head slightly, flustered. "You speak as if you know me well." "Not well enough yet," he replied. The admission made her heart pulse faster. They reached the crossing where the street divided, one path leading toward her home, the other continuing toward the city walls. She stopped. "This is as far as you need to walk," she said softly. He stopped beside her. "I would continue, if you asked me to." She shook her head gently. "My father will worry if he sees a stranger with me, especially one of your stature." He accepted this with quiet understanding. "Then allow me to say one more thing before I leave you to your night." She braced herself for whatever truth he held. "The matter concerning your family's estate. Someone has been asking questions. Someone who wishes to know whether the last rightful heir is still alive." Her breath caught. "But that heir was lost long ago." Mateo met her gaze. "No, Inez," he said. "She is standing before me right now." Inez felt the world tilt beneath her feet, as if the stones of the street themselves had shifted. She stared at Mateo, unable to understand how her quiet, ordinary life could suddenly be tied to a title she had never claimed. "I'm not an heir to anything," she whispered. "My family lost the estate before I could even speak." Mateo stepped a little closer, but not enough to overwhelm her. "The estate was lost through confusion of documents," he said. "Not because your family forfeited its rights. The laws then were tangled, and the Valcazar name was pushed aside at a moment when no one could defend it." She shook her head, trying to process his words. "My father never spoke of this. He always said the matter was closed." "Your father protected you," Mateo replied softly, "and perhaps he believed the matter too painful to revisit. But the truth is this. The final signature tied to the ownership belonged to your grandfather, and when he died, the rights passed to your father, then to you. The records only resurfaced recently." She wrapped her arms around her waist as if anchoring herself. "Why would those papers appear now? Why after so many years?" "That is what I intend to find out," Mateo said. "But before that can happen, you must know why this concerns me personally. There is more between our families than a forgotten estate. There was once an agreement, one your father may have left unspoken." She felt confusion gather like a cloud. "An agreement for what?" Mateo hesitated, searching her eyes with an expression she could not decipher. "A partnership between our families," he said carefully. "A pledge to rebuild the land together after years of drought and hardship. Nothing binding, nothing restrictive, only shared responsibility." Inez blinked. "Shared responsibility? Between you and me?" "Between our families," he corrected, "but agreements fade when people pass on. I came to Burgos tonight because I intended to meet your father and ask what he remembered. Instead, I found you, and I realized something the moment I saw you at the tavern. Her heart thudded. What did you realize? That the past and the present had aligned in a way I did not expect, he said, and that whatever burden your family carried should no longer be yours alone. The intensity of his words unsettled her. My lord, I am no one important. I am a tavern worker. I barely earn enough to buy medicine. You cannot imagine— He raised a hand gently. I can imagine more than you think. I know hardship is not measured by wealth alone, and I also know that titles mean little when weighed against character. I came as a count tonight, but I speak now as the man who once sat at your family's table and found warmth there. She felt something ache inside her chest. You honor my parents too greatly. No, Matteo murmured. They deserve every word. She looked away, breathing slowly to steady the tremble in her voice. Even if everything you say is true, what do you expect of me? What role am I meant to play in this? Matteo took a measured breath. I expect nothing you are not willing to give, but I hope— He paused. I hope you will let me help you reclaim what was yours. Not only the estate, but your family's dignity. Her throat tightened. I don't know if I'm strong enough for that. You are, he said simply. I saw that tonight. You stood your ground with grace even when others pressed too close. Strength does not always shout. Sometimes it speaks softly and endures. She swallowed hard, unsure how to answer. The weight of his gaze settled on her, not as pressure, but as reassurance. Yet beneath that reassurance lay something unspoken, something that made her pulse drum faster. They stood beneath the lantern for a long moment. Inez felt as if the entire city had fallen silent, just to hear what he would say next. Then Matteo lowered his voice even further. There is one more truth you deserve before this night ends. She looked at him, waiting. I did not come to Burgos only for the estate, he said. I came because I wanted to find you. Her breath froze. Find me? Why? Because, he said, and his eyes held hers without wavering. I have thought of your family for years, and in thinking of them, I often wondered what had become of the child who watched me so curiously that day. And when I learned of the estate's review, I decided I could no longer stay away. I wished to see you with my own eyes. Inez stepped back, not from fear but from sheer disbelief. My lord, you cannot mean that. I do, he answered quietly. Emotions rose in her so quickly she couldn't separate them. Astonishment, fear, confusion, and something dangerously close to hope. She wrapped her arms tighter around herself. This makes no sense. I am nothing more than— Do not say that, Matteo interrupted gently. You are not nothing. You are the last of a family wronged by circumstance. And more than that, you are someone whose spirit remained whole despite hardship. I saw enough tonight to know that. She felt tears pricking but refused to let them fall. You forget your place, my lord, or perhaps you forget mine. I forget nothing, he said, but I am willing to cross the line between our stations if you allow it. Her heart hammered in her chest. Why would you? Because I want to know you, Inez. Not the child I once met, but the woman you have become. She stared at him, unsure whether to breathe or run or simply let herself feel the pull of his sincerity. He stepped no closer, but his presence filled the night around them. And yet, she whispered, you are a count. I am. He shook his head. Titles do not matter in moments like this. But they do, she insisted. The world may speak freely of kindness and fairness, but it never forgets rank. Let it speak, he said softly. I am not bound by their whispers. She pressed a trembling hand to her forehead. I can't think. You speak of truths and burdens and family ties, and now this. How can I trust any of it? How can I trust that this is not a passing kindness? You cannot trust words alone, Matteo said, which is why I speak plainly now. I have no intention of leaving matters unfinished. Not the estate, not my promise to your family, and not the truth of how I feel when I look at you. Her pulse stopped. She looked up at him slowly. How you feel? Matteo held her gaze without flinching. I feel drawn to you in a way I did not expect. Not because of duty, nor because of history, but because you are someone whose presence struck me the moment I entered that tavern. You carry yourself with quiet courage. You speak with honesty. And you remind me of the goodness I found long ago, the goodness I feared I had lost. The world slipped away. Only his voice remained. I do not ask for anything now, he said. Only that you know the truth. Whatever comes next will be your choice. Her heart trembled. My father, he will not accept such talk easily. I would speak with him if you wished it, Mateo replied. With respect, she shook her head. Not yet. I need time. And I need to understand all of this before I can allow anyone else into it. He inclined his head. Then I will wait. As long as you need. Silence stretched softly between them. She finally whispered, I never imagined my life would change in a single night. Neither did I, Mateo said. But I'm glad it did. She looked down the road toward her home. My father will be waiting. I should go. May I walk you farther? He asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. No. Tonight has already given me too much to consider, but thank you for your honesty. He bowed slightly. Then we part here. But before you go, he paused, I will return tomorrow to speak with you again, if you allow it. She nodded slowly. Then, tomorrow. Mateo stepped back, watching her take the first few steps toward her home. The lantern light followed her, casting a long shadow behind her. She felt his gaze like a gentle hand at her back, steady but never forceful. When she finally reached the corner and turned to look at him one last time, he was still standing where she had left him, the night gathering around him like a cloak. She opened her mouth to say goodnight, but at that moment, someone emerged from a doorway behind her, breathless, carrying a sealed letter in trembling hands. Inez, the messenger said, this was left for you at the tavern, addressed in your mother's handwriting. Inez stared at the letter as if it were a ghost. Her mother's handwriting, gentle curves, steady strokes, was impossible to mistake. She had seen it only in old recipes and marginal notes in a prayer book, long since kept in a wooden chest. But the paper in her hands was clean, unaged, freshly delivered. That alone made her knees weaken. She looked at the messenger, a young boy who often ran errands between shops. Where did you get this? A man brought it, the boy answered. A quiet man. He said only to place it in your hands. He didn't leave a name. Her pulse thudded wildly. That cannot be. My mother has been gone for years. The boy nodded, uncomfortable. I only did as I was told, señorita. I swear it. She forced a breath, steadying herself. Thank you. You may go. He ran off, grateful to be free of the strange task. Behind her, Mateo had stepped closer, not intruding, only close enough to hear her whisper, This can't be real. He spoke gently. May I see? She shook her head quickly. No. Not yet. I must open it first. She clutched the letter to her chest. I need to go home. I understand, he said. Go to your father. Read it where you feel safe. If you need anything after, send word to the inn where I'm staying. She nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Then she hurried down the narrow street, feeling the letter burn against her palms. Mateo watched her go, but did not follow. When she reached her home, her father was sitting near the small window, his blanket pulled up to his chest. He had fallen asleep waiting for her. As she entered, the floor creaked and he opened his eyes. Inez, you're late. I worried. I'm sorry, Papa. A strange thing happened. He sat up, coughing lightly. What is that in your hand? She swallowed. A letter. For me. Look, it carries Mama's handwriting. Her father stiffened as if struck by lightning. Let me see that. She hesitated only a moment before handing it to him. His trembling fingers traced the name on the front. Then he looked up, pale. This is her hand. I would know it anywhere. But how? She whispered. He didn't answer. He opened the envelope slowly, carefully, as if afraid it might vanish. Inside was a single sheet of parchment. He unfolded it, and his breath hitched. Inez edged closer. What does it say? He read aloud in a hoarse voice. My dearest daughter, if this letter reaches you, then years have passed, and fate has brought something important to your path. I write this knowing you will read it only when you must learn the truth. Do not fear what is coming. Trust the one who bears the crest of Islava. He will protect what you cannot yet understand. And when the moment arrives, stand with courage. You are stronger than you think. With eternal love, your mother. The letter slipped slightly in her father's hands. Inez covered her mouth. She had never heard her mother speak of anything like this. Not prophecies, not warnings, not hidden truths. Papa, what does this mean? He sank back, closing his eyes with a pained sigh. She wrote that before she grew ill. She left it with a friend in the capital. They agreed it would be delivered only if needed. I never thought. Not after all these years. Why didn't you tell me? She demanded, though her voice trembled. He looked at her with sorrow. Because I thought the matter was dead. I thought keeping silence was kindness. But there was no kindness in the confusion clawing at her now. She paced the small room, clutching her shawl around herself. Why did she mention the crest of Islava? Why him? Why now? Her father breathed slowly. Inez, there is something I never found the courage to tell you. Long ago, when you were small, our family's fate became tied to the house of Islava. Not by force, by trust. Your mother believed in Mateo's father, and she believed one day that trust would return to you. A strange ache stirred in her chest, so the Count knew more than he told me. Perhaps, her father whispered. She pressed her hands to her temples. Papa, this is too much. Tonight I learned about the estate. Then the Count says I am its rightful heir. Then this letter arrives. As if my mother knew. Her father nodded wearily. She often knew more than she said. Your mother saw paths before they opened. Inez turned sharply. What did she expect me to do? What does she mean by courage? What path? Her father hesitated. She wanted you to reclaim what was lost. She feared I would not have strength to do it. She hoped the Islava family would help you when the time came. Inez felt the world closing in. All of this happened because she knew him once, because she met him before. It felt impossible. Her father watched her with a tired, frail gaze. What troubles you most? She hesitated, but the truth slipped out anyway. Papa, the Count, he said he came to find me. He spoke of our families, but he also... She paused, cheeks warming. He spoke with sincerity, as if he valued me beyond the estate. Her father stiffened. What kind of sincerity? She turned away. I don't know what he meant, but he spoke as if he wanted to know me, truly know me, and I don't understand why. Her father exhaled, neither approving nor disapproving, simply absorbing the revelation. If he meant harm, he would not speak so openly. And your mother. She trusted his family deeply. Inez sank into the lone chair beside the hearth. Papa, I don't know what to feel. He reached for her hand with trembling fingers. You are at the center of a story begun long before you were born. You must walk it with wisdom, not fear. She stared at the letter again, running her thumb over the signature. Mama, why did you leave this for me? Her father spoke softly. Because she believed your future would one day change. Inez lowered her head, thinking of Mateo's eyes, his calm voice, the way he looked at her not as a servant or stranger, but as someone who mattered. Change how? She whispered. Her father looked toward the window, as if expecting someone to appear outside. That depends on who seeks you now. Before she could ask more, a knock echoed from the door. She froze. Her father's eyes widened in alarm. At this hour, Inez stood, heart racing, and approached slowly. Who is there? A well-known voice answered. Inez, it is the caretaker from your family's old estate. I bring news, urgent news. Her father instinctively rose from his seat despite his weakness. Open the door, child. Inez unlatched it and pulled it open. There, illuminated by the dim street lantern, stood an older man, wrapped in a thick cloak. He removed his hood with trembling hands. His eyes carried the weight of many silent years. Senor Villabruna, she breathed. She recognized him at once. He had tended the Valcazar lands before they were lost. He had vanished when the estate fell into confusion. Forgive the hour, he said. I traveled as fast as I could after receiving word. I learned today that you are being sought. Sought? She echoed. Yes, he said. Someone in the capital is reviewing the ownership claim, and they mean to summon you. He paused. But there is more. I found documents. Papers your mother once entrusted to me. And now that the estate has risen again in question, they must be placed in your hands. Her father pressed a hand to his chest. What documents? Villabruna looked between them gravely. Proof. Records that could restore everything, but they must be protected. Inez felt her breath thin. Protected from whom? Villabruna opened his mouth to answer, but before he could speak, someone else stepped into view behind him on the street. A tall figure, familiar in posture and presence. Count Mateo approached, his expression unreadable. He stopped in front of the doorway. eyes locking onto Inez with a seriousness she had not yet seen from him. "I'm sorry to arrive unannounced," he said softly, "but I have just received word from the capital." Inez swallowed, clutching the edge of the door. "What word?" she asked, barely breathing. Matteo looked directly at her. "They know you are the rightful heir, and they want you brought to the capital at once." Inez felt her father's grip tighten around her wrist, as if he feared the world might sweep her away the moment she stepped outside. She stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes locked on Matteo's. His expression carried a gravity that left no room for misunderstanding. The summons was real. The moment she had never imagined was now standing directly in front of her. Her father spoke first, his voice thin. "Why must she go to the capital? What do they want with her? She has no business with nobles or councils." Matteo bowed his head respectfully to the older man. "Don Valcázar, I understand your concerns, but as of this evening, the council has acknowledged the legitimacy of her lineage. They intend to confirm whether she is indeed the rightful successor to the estate. They cannot force her to travel," he added quickly, noticing the alarm in their eyes. "But refusing to appear will make the matter much harder to defend." Villabruna stepped forward, supporting Matteo's words with a weary nod. "I traveled from the estate because I feared this moment would come without warning. Your wife knew this day might arrive, Don Valcázar. That is why she entrusted me with the papers." Her father trembled. "Then why hide them all these years? Why not help us sooner?" Villabruna lowered his voice. "Because I did not know whom to trust. The estate was contested, and I feared putting the girl at risk. I kept the documents safe until someone connected to your family resurfaced. Count Matteo." The room felt too small for all this truth. Inez stepped back, clutching the letter from her mother. Everything that had once been distant, old names, forgotten land, promises buried in time, now stood at her door. She looked at Matteo. "Is it true? Do they really expect me to go to the capital?" He held her gaze. "They do. But hear me clearly. You will not go alone. If you choose to travel, I will accompany you, and I will stand by you through every question and every witness. You have my word." Her father broke into a coughing fit at the thought. She rushed to him, helping him sit. He waved her off with trembling hands. "I won't let them take you," he muttered. "I won't let them drag you into noble disputes. You're all I have, Inez." She knelt beside him. "Papa, no one is taking me anywhere. Not unless I decide." Matteo approached them cautiously. "Don Valcázar, I swear on my family name that no harm will come to her, and nothing will be done without her consent. The journey is not long, perhaps 2 days by carriage. She would not be hidden, nor pressed, nor—" Her father lifted his hand. "Enough." His tired eyes turned to Inez. "You wish to go, don't you?" She swallowed. I don't know. Everything happened too quickly." Villabruna stepped closer, his voice urgent but kind. "Child, the estate carries your mother's hopes. These papers," he removed a small bundle from his cloak, "prove a pledge between the Valcázars and the Eslavas. If you walk away, the council will bury the matter again, and the truth your mother guarded will disappear." Inez stared at the bundle in his hands, wrapped in worn fabric and tied with faded thread. She reached out and carefully unwrapped it. Inside were parchments bearing seals, signatures and ink old enough to crumble at the edges but still intact. Matteo leaned forward slightly, watching her reaction. "Those are the documents I suspected existed. A partnership, a shared restoration. Your mother and my father agreed to rebuild the lands together when the drought ended. But before anything could begin, misfortune tore both families in separate directions." Inez felt each word settling heavily on her shoulders. "And now they expect me to finish what they never could? But I know nothing of land or agreements or—" "You know responsibility," Matteo said, "and courage and honesty. Those matter far more." Her father took her hand, squeezing tight. "Inez, the choice is yours. I cannot go with you. I am no longer strong enough for travel. But if you choose to go, then go with your head high. Your mother believed in this. She believed in you." Inez felt her throat tighten. She didn't want to leave him, not even for 2 days. The thought alone made her chest ache, but she also felt the gravity of her mother's letter, as though her voice whispered through the parchment. "Trust the one who bears the crest of Eslava." She glanced at Matteo, searching his face for any sign of deception. but his expression remained open, steady, and unexpectedly gentle. "You will not rush your decision," he added. "We can begin tomorrow or next week or not at all. But I came tonight to ensure you had the truth in time to choose. Nothing more." Villabruna nodded. "The council will not close the matter quickly. You have days, perhaps weeks, to present yourself." Her father rubbed his forehead. "How would she even travel? With whom? Under what name?" Matteo answered. "If she agrees, she travels as herself. No disguises, no pretenses, only protection and escort. I will arrange a carriage and a companion from Burgos if needed." Inez bit her lip. She was unprepared for journeys, courts, or questions. She had never been farther than the market road, and yet something inside her, a quiet, steady pull, told her that her mother had written this letter for a reason. She looked at Villabruna. "If I go, what happens at the estate?" The old caretaker smiled softly. "Then the land breathes again, child, and the Valcazar name rises where it once stood proud." Inez exhaled slowly. The room felt too still, too fragile, as though any sound might shift her fate entirely. Finally she spoke. "If I go, I want to see the estate first." Villabruna nodded immediately. "Wise choice." Matteo's brows lifted. "You wish to visit the land?" "Yes," she said. "Before anything else. If it is part of my mother's hope, then I must see it with my own eyes. I cannot make a decision in the dark." Matteo stepped forward, placing a hand over his heart in agreement. "Then tomorrow morning, we go, quietly. Hand at your pace." Her father tried to rise, but winced in pain. "Promise me," he said to Matteo, voice trembling, "that she returns safely." "I swear it," Matteo replied. Inez knelt beside her father again. "I will return before nightfall. It's only a short journey." Villabruna added, "Not far, and I will guide you myself." Her father lowered his head in resignation. "Then go. See what remains of where you were born." Inez closed her mother's letter gently and tucked it inside her shawl. A soft warmth rose inside her. Nerves, yes, but also a strange spark of hope. Matteo turned toward the door. "I will await you at the city's gate at dawn. Bring only what you need for the day." Inez nodded. "I will be there." As Matteo stepped outside, Villabruna followed. But before he left, the old caretaker paused in the doorway and looked at her father. "There is one more thing your daughter should know," he said. "Something I discovered today." Her father's eyes sharpened. "What is it?" Villabruna hesitated, then spoke slowly. "In the sealed papers, your wife left a second letter, not for your daughter, for the Count." Inez felt the world collapse into silence. A second letter, one written by her mother, but not to her, to the Count. Her father tried to speak, but words tangled in his throat. Villabruna stepped back as if realizing he had revealed more than he intended. Matteo paused mid-step outside the doorway, turning slowly to face them both. "A letter for me?" he asked. Villabruna nodded. "Yes, my lord, I had not intended to deliver it tonight, but with all that has been said, I feared keeping it longer might betray her trust." Inez felt her breath shorten. Why would her mother write to the Count of Islava? Why would she send a message meant to be read years after her death? Matteo's tone softened. "May I see it?" Villabruna looked torn. "It is yours by right," he admitted, "but it was sealed with wax bearing the Valcazar crest. I dared not break it." Her father suddenly spoke, voice rough. "Give it to him. If my wife meant to speak beyond her years, let her words reach who they were meant for." Villabruna reached inside his cloak and removed a smaller bundle, wrapped in a folded cloth. He held it gently, as though it might crumble if handled carelessly. He extended it to Matteo with a respectful bow. Matteo accepted the parcel with both hands. The cloth fell away, revealing a letter closed with a wax seal indeed marked with the old Valcazar crest, 3 narrow branches around a rising sun. The seal was unbroken. Inez stared at it, feeling the room grow warmer and colder all at once. She had never seen that seal outside her mother's belongings. It felt like touching a memory. Matteo looked up. "I will not open it here," he said. "Not in the dark, and not before you both rest. Whatever this contains, it should be read with a clear mind." Her father nodded weakly, but Inez could not remain still. She approached Matteo with hesitant steps. "Do you think the letter concerns the estate?" "It might," he answered. "Or it might concern your mother's hopes, or something she foresaw. Your mother was wiser than most ever realized." Inez bit her lip. "My mother never spoke of secrets. Some people guard truth until the world is ready for it," Matteo said quietly. She felt a flutter inside her chest, fear mixed with curiosity and something deeper. Villa Bruna bowed once more. "I will take my leave now. I will meet you at dawn outside the southern gate. Until then, rest, child. Tomorrow will be a long day." He turned and slipped into the street, leaving the three of them in a fragile quiet. Her father settled into his chair, exhaustion heavy in his bones. Inez watched Matteo carefully as he examined the sealed letter. He seemed calm, but there was a subtle tension in the way his fingers brushed the edge of the parchment. She found her voice again. "My lord, do you know why she would write to you?" "No," Matteo said honestly, "but I remember her well. If she wrote to me, she believed the words would matter one day." Inez exhaled slowly. It frightened her, not because she feared Matteo, but because her mother had always spoken with purpose. If she left him a message, then it meant the connection between their families was deeper than she had ever been told. Matteo noticed her expression and lowered the letter. "Do not trouble yourself tonight. Your mother's words will guide us when the time comes." Her father coughed and Inez rushed to his side. He waved her off, embarrassed by the weakness. "I will be fine, child. Go speak with him if you must. I see the questions in your eyes." She hesitated, but at last rose and stepped toward Matteo. He stood near the doorway, cloak draped loosely over his shoulders. He looked as though he wished to give her space, yet hoped she would speak. "Do you think this letter will change anything?" she asked softly. "Everything," he answered, "or nothing. It depends on what she wished to tell me. But whatever it reveals, it will not alter my intention to help you. That promise is my own, not tied to old letters." His words steadied her, though they stirred emotions she was not ready to name. She glanced again at the sealed parchment. "May I?" she began, then faltered. "May you what?" he asked gently. "May I be there when you read it?" Matteo inhaled slowly. "If that is your wish, yes. But I warn you, whatever your mother wrote, she wrote with truth. She would not veil her meaning." Inez nodded. "I would rather face truth than be left in shadows." He seemed to respect her courage deeply. "Then tomorrow after we visit the estate we will read it together." She stepped back, feeling her heartbeat settle. "Thank you, my lord." He shook his head slightly. "Tonight, call me only Matteo. There is no court between us now." The word lingered between them, warmer than she expected. "Matteo." He seemed as affected by the moment as she was, though he hid it well. He straightened his cloak. "I should go. You both need rest. Dawn comes quickly." She walked him to the doorway, trying not to reveal the confusion of her emotions. He paused just outside, looking at her with a softness she had come to recognize only in the last few hours. "You were brave tonight, Inez. Braver than you realize." She lowered her eyes. "I didn't feel brave. Courage rarely feels like courage when you're living it," he said. "Good night, she whispered. He bowed gently to her father and then stepped into the quiet street. When he was gone, Inez closed the door slowly, feeling the cool wood steady her. Her father watched her carefully. "You trust him?" She hesitated. "I want to, but I don't know if I should." He leaned back, eyes weary but wise. "Trust is rarely safe, but some people earn it with how they carry themselves. Your mother trusted his family, and you—" He paused to catch his breath. "You seemed to walk toward him instead of away." Inez blushed faintly. "Papa," he smiled, though it was a tired smile. "I am your father. I see what you do not speak." She looked away, too flustered to reply. He took her hand. "Whatever happens tomorrow, remember this. Your mother left those letters for a reason. She believed in your future long before you were old enough to imagine it." Inez squeezed his hand gently. "And I will return to you before night falls. I promise." He nodded, satisfied. "Then go and rest. You will need strength at dawn." She helped him settle into bed and whispered good night. Then she retreated to her small room. The moment she closed the door, she sat on the edge of her bed, burying her face in her hands. Questions swirled all around her. Why did her mother write to Matteo? What truth was buried in the estate? And why did she feel drawn to this man who had upended her entire world in a single evening? She lay down, but sleep refused to come quickly. When she finally drifted off, she dreamed of her mother standing under the orchard tree, sunlight weaving through her hair. "Trust him," her mother whispered in the dream. Inez startled awake, just as dawn lightened the edge of the sky. She rose, dressed quickly, and wrapped her shawl. Her father watched her from the doorway. "You'll return by sunset," he murmured. "I will," she assured him. "Rest while I'm gone." He nodded. She stepped outside, her heart racing with uncertainty and hope. The southern gate stood quiet, but not empty. Matteo was already there, cloak sweeping softly behind him, as if he had been waiting longer than he admitted. Beside him stood a simple carriage and Villabruna, who greeted her with a tired but hopeful smile. "You came," Matteo said, his voice low and warm. Inez approached him. "Yes, I am ready." He studied her a moment, and something in his expression deepened, as if he saw not just the woman before him, but every step that had brought her to this moment. Villabruna opened the carriage door. "We should leave before the roads grow busy." Inez placed one foot on the step, then paused as a breathless voice called out. "Wait!" someone shouted, running toward them from the direction of the market. All three turned at once. Joaquin, the tavern owner, stumbled into view, waving a folded document over his head. His face was flushed with urgency. "Inez," he cried, "you must hear this before you go." Joaquin was not a man who ran often, and certainly not at dawn. But here he was, breathless, red-faced, and waving a folded document as if it were a torch meant to stop the whole world in its tracks. Inez froze on the carriage step. Matteo and Villabruna turned toward the tavern owner with instant concern. Joaquin reached them, bent over with hands on his knees, fighting for air. A moment passed before he managed to speak. "Forgive me," he wheezed. "Forgive the hour." But this could not wait. Inez hurried to him. "Joaquin, what is it? What happened?" He straightened, thrusting the document into her hands. "A letter. Someone left it at the tavern this morning. It carries your family's crest." He lowered his voice. "And it was addressed to you alone. The second letter in 24 hours. Her fingers trembled as she held it. The seal matched the one from her mother's letter, 3 branches around a rising sun. But this seal was marked in dark ink instead of wax. It was less formal, perhaps rushed, more personal. Villabruna leaned in, startled. "That seal. That is your mother's hand, child. But the paper is newer." Inez stared at the parchment. "That's impossible." Matteo gently stepped forward. "May I see?" His tone held no pressure, only concern. Inez nodded and handed him the letter. Matteo examined the seal, then the handwriting on the front. He frowned, not in alarm but with recognition. "This is her hand," he murmured, "but not written long ago. It's—" He looked closer. "It is difficult to date without opening it, but the ink is not decades old." Joaquin raised a hand. "There's more. The man who left it asked for no payment, no name, no message. He only said it was his duty to deliver it today of all days, and that the girl must read it before she leaves Burgos." The words tightened around Inez like a silent net. "Before she leaves Burgos," as if her mother, or someone acting in her name, had foreseen this moment. Her voice broke softly. "It can't be. My mother never wrote anything after she fell sick." "There's no way." Villabruna coughed lightly. "Letters can be written earlier than they are delivered, child." Zama kept in secrecy for years. She was a careful woman, Matteo nodded, and she entrusted things to people she believed would protect them, as we already saw. Inez stared at the sealed letter. Her fingertips brushed the inked crest as though it might vanish if she touched it too long. Finally she said, "I will open it." She searched for a quiet place, but the open road and morning light felt strangely appropriate. She held the letter in both hands, took a steady breath and broke the ink seal. The paper unfolded easily. Her mother's handwriting flowed across the page in familiar strokes, like a voice from long ago speaking through her memory. She read aloud, her voice barely more than a whisper. "My beloved daughter, if you read this, then the moment I feared and hoped for has arrived. The path before you is no longer small, and you will stand where your father cannot. Do not fear the weight of the Valcazar name. You were born to carry it with grace. You will meet someone from the house of Eslava. Do not turn away from him. His presence will mark the moment your life changes course. Let trust guide you, but watchfulness shape your steps. Your future will not be built alone. When the time comes, stand beside the one who walks with sincerity. You will know him not by title, but by the steadiness of his heart. Go to the estate. Seek the truth buried there. And when doubt surrounds you, remember this. You are braver than you believe, and your heart will not lead you astray. With all my love, your mother. The letter trembled in Inez's hands. Mateo stepped forward carefully. Your mother. She wrote this with knowledge of today. Inez shook her head slowly. Or she wrote it long ago, and somehow knew I would need it now. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. She often knew more than she said. Villabruna rubbed his chin. Your mother was wise. She saw the trouble rising in the kingdom. She knew our families would cross paths again. Joaquin touched her arm. Inez, do not fear this. Your mother's voice carries strength. It is not a warning. It is a blessing. But Inez felt as though her thoughts had been swept into a river, unable to cling to solid ground. She swallowed hard. She spoke of someone from the house of Eslava. She looked toward Mateo. He lowered his gaze respectfully. Your mother was a rare woman. I remember her well. She had a gift for seeing the heart of people. Inez studied him for a long, silent moment. His calm, steady demeanor. His thoughtful eyes. The way he listened more than he spoke. She found herself searching his expression for signs of the sincerity her mother had written about. Mateo noticed her uncertainty and stepped back, giving her space. Whatever she believed about him, he wanted it to be her belief, not something she was pushed toward. Villabruna clasped his hands. Child, we must go. If you wish to see the estate before the day grows busy, we must start now. Yet Inez hesitated, not from fear of the estate, but because her heart now beat with a strange mix of expectation and caution. The letter had shaken something inside her, opened a door she didn't know existed. Mateo spoke quietly. Inez, you do not have to make any decision now. Not about the estate. Not about the summons. Not about me. The journey today is only to see what was once yours. Nothing more. She appreciated that more than she could say. She nodded slowly. Then let us go. Joaquin exhaled in relief. Good. I feared you might lose courage, though you are the last person in this town who ever lacks it. Inez managed a faint smile. Thank you, Joaquin. He pressed her shoulder warmly. Return safe. Your father needs you. She promised she would. Then she climbed into the carriage with care. Villabruna settled inside as well, placing the old documents in his lap. Mateo stepped in last, only after ensuring she was comfortable. The carriage began moving, wheels clattering gently on the cobbled road. The town slowly faded behind them, stone by stone, roof by roof, until Burgos became a distant cluster of shapes. Inez watched it disappear with a knot tightening in her chest. Mateo noticed. Tell me what weighs on you. She hesitated, then whispered, My mother trusted you, or your family, and she trusted something I can't yet see. But trust feels like a leap into darkness. Mateo nodded slowly, then let the leap be small, one step at a time. Today only asks that you look, not decide. Villabruna smiled warmly. Your mother had faith, child, and she left you more guidance than most people ever receive. You carry her strength. Inez lowered her gaze. I hope that is true. The carriage continued along the quiet road. The air grew lighter, the fields opening before them. Birds scattered overhead. The journey was peaceful, but her heart refused to calm. At last, after nearly an hour, the shape of her family's old lands appeared on the horizon, a broad stretch of earth surrounded by uneven stone walls, worn by weather and time. Villabruna leaned forward. There she is, he said. Valcazar land. Inez stared. The fields were wild and unkept, but something about them stirred an ache deep inside her. She had been too young to remember the estate as it once was, but her parents had spoken of it with wistful affection. She whispered, It feels familiar, even though I cannot recall it. Villabruna nodded. Memories often lie beneath the skin. Mateo opened the carriage door. Would you like to walk the rest of the way? She nodded. Yes, They stepped onto the path, the morning breeze brushing lightly against them. Villabruna led them toward the overgrown courtyard, where remnants of old stone walls and empty stables stood in quiet testimony to a life long gone. Inez touched one of the stone pillars. "My mother used to stand here, didn't she?" Villabruna nodded. "She did. And your father planted fruit trees just beyond this wall. Many died after the drought. But some survived," he pointed. And indeed a few trees grew there still, thin, leaning slightly, but alive. Inez felt a pinch in her heart. Matteo watched her carefully, his gaze full of quiet understanding. "This place holds your family's story." "Yes," she whispered. "But it holds more than that. Secrets, letters, promises." Villabruna motioned them toward the ruined main house. "There is something inside you must see. Something I could not move or hide. Something left untouched for years." They followed him across the courtyard, stepping through the half-open doorway. Dust coated the floors, and sunlight poured through cracks in the broken roof. Despite the ruin, there was a strange peace hanging over the place. Inez looked around slowly. Everything felt frozen in time. Villabruna pointed toward a small wooden chest near the far wall. It was covered in dust but intact. "That belonged to your mother." Inez felt her breath catch. She approached the chest, kneeling beside it. Her fingers hovered above the lid. "Would you like help?" Matteo asked. She shook her head. "No, this is mine." Her hand closed around the handle. She took a breath. Then she lifted the lid. Inside lay a stack of folded linens, a few household trinkets, a faded shawl, and beneath them all, a leather pouch tied with ribbon. Villabruna gasped softly. "I never touched that. I didn't know what it held." Inez lifted the pouch. It felt heavy. She loosened the ribbon. Matteo watched closely, not with hunger for answers, but with deep respect. Inez opened the pouch, and her eyes widened. Inside lay a key, but not an ordinary one. It was engraved with the crest of Eslava. Matteo stepped forward, stunned. "That is not possible. That is my family's crest." Inez turned the key over in her palm. Her mother hid this here. "But why? What does it open?" Before anyone could answer, footsteps echoed outside. All three turned sharply toward the doorway. A rider approached the estate, dust rising behind the horse. The messenger carried the colors of the royal capital. He dismounted quickly and called out, "Count Matteo de Eslava, urgent dispatch from the council. The matter concerning Inez Valcázar has changed, effective immediately." The rider's voice echoed across the ruined courtyard, startling birds from the trees. Dust settled slowly as the young man approached, holding out a sealed parchment marked with the council's emblem, a coiled lion and olive branch. His breath still raced from the long charge up the hill toward the estate. Matteo stepped forward and accepted the document. Inez watched, heart tight in her chest, though she sensed the moment carried a different weight now. Not danger, not upheaval, only truth drawing nearer. The rider bowed. "My lord, I was told to place this in your hands without delay. The council met before dawn." Matteo nodded. "Thank you. You may rest at the carriage before returning." The rider stepped back, grateful for the offer, and left them in the courtyard stillness. Villabruna wiped his brow nervously, yet he sensed this message would not bring fresh turmoil. The wind had changed direction. The air seemed lighter somehow. Matteo broke the seal carefully and unfolded the parchment. His expression tightened at first, focused, thoughtful, but then softened with something like quiet relief. He read the lines twice, as if confirming each word before speaking. Inez drew closer. "What does it say?" Matteo raised his eyes to hers. "The council has reached a preliminary conclusion. They recognize your claim as legitimate. They only await your presence to complete the process." Villabruna's shoulders sagged with gratitude. "Then it is done." "Not entirely," Matteo replied, "but the council acknowledges her. They will not question her right to the estate, and they request her testimony not to challenge her, but to complete the record." Inez breathed out slowly. The air seemed to fill her lungs in a way it never had before. All the fear she carried since the night in the tavern loosened its hold. "So they will not attempt to take anything from us?" she asked. "No," Matteo said gently. "Quite the contrary. They mean to restore what was lost. She closed her eyes. Relief washed through her like a soft tide, quiet, steady, cleansing. She had spent years believing her family's past was buried in dust, but now the kingdom itself acknowledged what her mother had fought to protect. Villabruna wiped his eyes with the corner of his sleeve. Your mother would rejoice, child. All she wanted was to see your future secure. Inez nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, the estate did not feel like a burden. It felt like a gift flowing forward from generations carried on her mother's shoulders. Mateo folded the parchment and stepped closer. Inez, this summons will not be a trial. It will be an introduction, a chance to speak not as a servant, but as a rightful heir. She felt her throat tighten, not with fear now, but with a stirring sense of dignity she had never allowed herself to imagine. I don't know if I can stand before nobles, she whispered. You can, Mateo replied, and you will not stand alone. She met his gaze, finding in it a steadiness that soothed her heart. Not the intensity of the night before, not the turmoil of secrets, but quiet reassurance. A companion, rather than a storm. The estate wind rustled through the ruined beams. Villabruna cleared his throat softly. There is something more she should see, something that belonged to her mother. He guided them back toward the small wooden chest. Inez knelt again, fingers brushing the folded linens until she found a thin leather-bound book tucked beneath them, her mother's journal, worn at the corners, soft from years of use. Mateo stepped back respectfully. This belongs to you alone. Inez opened the first pages. The handwriting leapt toward her like familiar breath. Woven through notes and domestic lists were short messages to her younger self, hopeful lines, gentle reminders, reflections on their land and dreams. She smiled faintly. She wrote here every night. Villabruna nodded. She believed that words kept the heart steady. Mateo moved closer, but kept his voice soft. What does it say? Inez flipped through pages until she reached a passage marked with a ribbon, the ribbon she remembered from her childhood, tied once around her mother's hair. It says, she hesitated. It says she wanted me to grow without bitterness, to seek truth without fear, and that, her voice wavered, that I should allow myself to trust others, even when the world made it difficult. Her eyes lifted to Mateo. He looked at her with an expression of deep kindness, not expectation. He said nothing, waiting for her to choose her own meaning, and she realized suddenly that this, more than anything else, was why her mother had trusted him. He did not rush. He did not demand. He simply stood beside her, offering steadiness. Villabruna placed a hand on her shoulder. Child, the world has turned in your favor. What remains now is your decision. Will you go to the capital and claim your heritage? Inez looked out across the wild fields. They no longer seemed empty. They felt ready, waiting for her voice, her steps, her return. She imagined her mother walking through the orchard, her father guiding the workers, Villabruna tending the land with quiet devotion. She straightened her shoulders. Yes, I will go. Not for wealth, not for status, but for my family's memory. Mateo nodded deeply, pride glimmering in his eyes. Then we leave at first light tomorrow. With proper rest and a calm mind, Villabruna exhaled in relief. Good. Very good. Inez turned back to the chest. The Eslava engraved key still lay in her palm. She held it up toward Mateo. Do you know what it opens? He studied it carefully, then shook his head. No. It is unlike the keys used in my father's house, but the symbol suggests something significant, something my father valued enough to tie to your family. We may find answers in the capital. Inez slipped the key into her shawl. Then tomorrow we seek those answers together. Mateo smiled faintly. Together. No tension shadowed the word, no uncertainty, only a steady promise of companionship, exactly as the 9th block of her journey required. The world felt calmer than it had in days, as though the ground beneath her feet had settled. Villabruna gestured toward the carriage. We should return to Burgos before your father grows anxious. They walked back slowly, taking in the land with each step. The ruined stones, the surviving trees, the remnants of walls her ancestors once built. It all felt like a home calling her name after years of silence. When they reached the carriage, Inez paused before climbing inside. She looked back at the estate one last time, letting the image settle into her memory, a promise of what she would reclaim. Matteo spoke softly beside her. You carry your mother's strength. I see it clearly now. She turned to him. You speak as if you knew her better than I imagined. I knew her briefly, he said, but the briefest of encounters can shape a lifetime. His voice was gentle, honest, free of the intensity that had startled her before. He was giving her room to breathe, room to grow into her newfound identity without the weight of his own past pressing upon her. Thank you, she said quietly. For standing with me today. Always, he replied. The carriage ride back to Burgos passed peacefully. No whispers, no tension, only calm conversation. Villabruna spoke of the estate's history, her father's early years, and the drought that had changed everything. Matteo added stories from his own childhood, carefully choosing only those moments that might comfort her, not overwhelm her. For the first time since the night in the tavern, Inez felt something lighten inside her, a gentle hope, fragile but growing. When they reached her home, her father was waiting at the window. The moment she stepped inside, he embraced her with a trembling smile. You returned, he whispered. Always, she replied. Her father looked to Matteo, gratitude softening every line of his tired face. Thank you for protecting her today. Matteo bowed. It was an honor. Villabruna placed the estate documents on the table. Don Valcázar, she will reclaim what is yours. I believe that now more than ever. Her father nodded, eyes glistening. Then let tomorrow come. As the sun set, Inez sat beside him, the journal open on her lap. They read through her mother's words together, quietly, peacefully, until night wrapped the house in warmth. Outside, Matteo stood alone beneath the lamplight, unfolding the sealed letter her mother had written to him long ago. He read it silently, the words of a woman long gone merging with the dusk. When he finished, he closed it with reverent hands. What did she say? Inez asked from the doorway, hesitant. Matteo looked up, his expression full of tenderness and clarity. No fear, no urgency, only truth. She said, I must guard your path, until the moment comes when you choose where your heart belongs. Dawn warmed Burgos with a gentle glow, brushing rooftops, shop signs, and sleeping streets with soft light. But Inez was awake long before the sun rose. Her father slept peacefully, finally after so many restless nights, and she watched him for a moment before stepping away softly. She felt the day waiting outside like an open gate. No dread, no fear, only a quiet certainty settling inside her. Today she would travel to the capital. Today she would claim her mother's legacy. And today, whether she was ready or not, her heart would face its own truth. She dressed simply, choosing her cleanest dress and a shawl that had once belonged to her mother. She took nothing more than the journal, the 2 letters, and the engraved key. When she stepped outside, the air felt fresh, carrying the scent of early morning bread and distant chimneys. Matteo stood near the carriage, already waiting for her. He looked up the instant her door opened. His voice was soft. You're early. So are you, she replied. They shared a brief smile, gentle, shy, fragile but growing in warmth. Villabruna appeared beside the carriage as well, tightening straps and checking wheels. He greeted her with a respectful nod. Are you ready, child? He asked. Yes, Inez said. More ready than I thought I could be. Matteo opened the carriage door, then let us begin. They set off just as the city stirred awake. Bakers opened shutters. Farmers rolled carts toward the market. A few neighbors waved at Inez, wishing her blessings and safe return. She waved back, heart full. She had spent years believing she was invisible beyond the tavern's walls. Yet today, it felt as if the town carried her forward with quiet pride. The journey lasted much of the morning, passing through soft hills and silver streams. Inside the carriage, Inez kept her hands clasped, the key warm against her palm. Matteo watched her carefully, not intruding, but present, steadying her without words. He finally spoke when they were halfway to the capital. What troubles you? She hesitated. Not trouble, she murmured. Only many thoughts. About the estate. About everything. He nodded, accepting her answer without pressing. Time passed easily, with soft conversation drifting between them. They spoke of her father's youth, of the orchard that once grew behind the estate, of Mateo's own memories of her family's kindness long ago. At one point, the carriage creaked over a bump, and Inez braced herself with a hand, only to land against Mateo's shoulder. She moved back quickly, embarrassed. "Forgive me," she said. "There is nothing to forgive," he replied quietly. The silence that followed carried a different warmth, gentle and unspoken. When they reached the capital gates, a group of guards recognized the crest on the carriage and opened the passage at once. People stepped aside respectfully for Mateo, though he gave no sign of enjoying their regard. Inez felt her nerves flutter as buildings rose taller and the streets buzzed with movement. She had never seen a city so vast. Mateo noticed her tension. "Do not fear them," he said. "You are not here as a stranger. You are here as an heir." "But I have nothing of an heir's grace," she whispered. "You have dignity," he replied, "and sincerity. Those matter far more." She exhaled, steadying herself. The carriage climbed the narrow road toward the council hall, a grand building with tall arches and gilded symbols above its entrance. When the horses stopped, Mateo offered her his hand. She accepted it, feeling strength flow through her arm. Inside the council chamber was solemn but not harsh. The councillors seated around the long table were older men and women with thoughtful expressions. They had been expecting her. One of them, a woman with silver hair pulled into a neat braid, stood first. "You must be Inez Valcázar." Inez nodded. "Yes, my lady. Please step forward," the woman said kindly. "We have awaited this confirmation for years." Inez stepped beside Mateo, who remained a respectful distance behind her, not overshadowing, not commanding, simply standing as her escort. The council questioned her gently, about her family, her memories, the letters, the documents Villabruna had brought. None of the questions felt like tests. They felt like puzzle pieces fitting into place. Villabruna presented the old parchments. Mateo spoke only when addressed, each word measured and calm, and Inez answered with a clarity she did not know she possessed. The elder councillor read the last of the documents and closed them carefully. "There is no doubt. You are the rightful heir of the Valcázar estate." Inez's breath escaped her in a soft rush. She almost swayed, but Mateo steadied her with a hand at her back. The council members offered her smiles free of arrogance, kind, sincere congratulations. "Your family endured hardship with quiet dignity," the woman with the silver braid said. "Today restores what never should have been lost." Inez bowed her head gratefully. "Thank you." The council dismissed them soon after, asking only one last question. Would she return in a week to sign the formal records? She answered yes. When they stepped out of the chamber, the sunlight across the courtyard felt brighter than any she had known. Villabruna let out a deep exhale. "It is finished, child." "Yes," Inez said softly. "Finished, and beginning at the same time." She turned to Mateo, expecting relief, but found something deeper in his eyes, something warm and unguarded. The world around them quieted in that moment. Their steps slowed together. "You carried yourself with grace," he said. "I was terrified," she admitted. He shook his head. "Courage is not the absence of fear, a pause, a long one, the kind that gathers meaning like wind gathering leaves." Inez looked down. "I could not have faced this alone." He stepped closer. "You did not face it because of me. You faced it because you were ready. I merely walked beside you." Her heart thudded once, too strong to ignore. She lifted her gaze to him. The sunlight caught the faint scar on his cheek, the one she had once feared. Now it seemed part of a story she wanted to understand fully. "There is something I must know," she whispered. "Something my mother wrote." Mateo nodded gently. "Ask it." She hesitated. Then, with courage she had carried her whole life but always hidden, she said, "My mother wrote that I must stand beside the one who walks with sincerity. How do I know who that is?" Mateo did not answer immediately. He stepped closer, slowly, giving her a chance to move away if she wished. She did not. His voice came low, steady. "You know sincerity not by words, Inez, but by consistency, by presence, by the way someone looks at you when you fear the world might break beneath you." She felt breathless. "And how do you look at me?" He held her gaze without wavering. "As someone I admire, someone I respect, someone I wish to know not only today but tomorrow and beyond." Her chest tightened, softly, sweetly. She had known attraction before, distant and fleeting, but never like this. never with the weight of sincerity wrapped around it. She whispered, "Matteo, I don't know if I deserve such regard." He reached for her hands, holding them with a gentleness that made her knees weaken. "You deserve far more than you allow yourself to believe." Her voice trembled. "I have lived as a tavern worker my whole life, and you did so with dignity," he said. "Titles do not make a person worthy. Actions do, and yours show more nobility than half the court." She swallowed. "And you? Why me?" "Because you changed the room the moment I saw you again," he said. "You reminded me of who I was before duty hardened me. You speak without guile. You face adversity with quiet hope. And," his voice softened further, "I find myself drawn to you in ways I cannot hide." Inez felt tears rising, not of fear, but of emotion too full to contain. The courtyard shimmered in the sunlight around them. She had imagined many endings to today, but not this one, this confession blooming like spring between them. She whispered, "Matteo, I feel something too." His grip on her hands stilled. "Something?" She nodded, cheeks warm. "Something I tried to ignore, something that frightened me. But now, after today, after all you have done, I cannot deny it anymore." He stepped closer, enough that their foreheads nearly touched. "Speak it, Inez, only if it is yours." She breathed, steady and clear. "I care for you." His eyes softened with emotion so deep she felt it like a tide. He brushed a thumb gently against the back of her hand, not claiming, not demanding, but cherishing. "Inez," he murmured, "you have no idea what your words mean to me." Their closeness wrapped around them warm and certain, a closeness built not on impulse but on days of truth, trust, and shared trials. She whispered, "Then what happens now?" Matteo drew a slow, careful breath. "Now, if you wish it, we walk toward the future together, not as noble and commoner, not as count and heir, but as two souls who found each other through the storms of life." Her heart trembled. "And if I say yes?" He smiled softly, the first true, unguarded smile she had seen from him. "Then I will ask you something I have wanted to ask since the night I spoke your name in the tavern." She felt breathless. "Ask me then." His voice grew quiet, steady as a vow. "Inez Valcázar, would you allow your life to join with mine? Not because of duty, not because of legacy, but because I cherish you, and I wish to walk every step beside you." Her eyes filled with tears, warm, grateful tears. She felt the weight of her mother's letters, the truth of her father's hopes, the strength of her heart all converging into this single moment. She did not hesitate. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Matteo." His relief was tender and deep. He pulled her into an embrace, gentle, respectful, yet full of affection that made her breath tremble. Her hands settled against his chest, feeling the quiet thrum of his heartbeat. He whispered against her hair, "Thank you." They held each other beneath the morning sun, surrounded by the quiet city and the promise of all that lay ahead. Villabruna wiped his eyes discreetly. "The estate will rejoice, child." Inez laughed softly through her tears. "I rejoice too." Matteo took her hands again. "Then come home with me. We will speak with your father. We will arrange the signing. And then, if he agrees, we will plan a union worthy of both our families." She nodded, glowing with warmth she had never known. And together they stepped toward the carriage, not as strangers, not as separated by rank or fear, but as two hearts finally choosing the path meant for them. Their journey forward began with a single joined step. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.